must have happened 3 or 4 years ago. It was somewhere in the middle of the night. I was watching Breaking Bad. In fact, I was watching my third consecutive episode of that night. I was ready to go on. I was more than halfway through. I was really curious. You're feeling very tired, feeling very happy, but also extremely guilty. The reason why I was feeling so guilty is because I had so much work to do. My inbox was bulging up. I had all these things going on, but I just couldn't resist. And the worst thing is that wasn't the only night. Actually, it was probably somewhere in the middle of the week, and the whole week had been like that. So I'd basically be running on fumes when it came to sleeping. And this idea formed in my mind. I had a bit of an epiphany. I'm going to go there. The thing is, we live in this world which is extremely crowded and it's extremely noisy, and it's increasingly so, right? And I think we're all living into this world where there's this ridiculous distraction epidemic. We all suffer from this, and it's only getting more and more. Coming back to that epiphany or that idea that I had is, there I was in the middle of the night, very tired, with major responsibilities, but still I just could not stop consuming that Netflix show. I mean, after all, this is about a school teacher who becomes a drug lord. And I wasn't getting anything in return from it. I just couldn't resist. And that show was actually competing with another show, which was House of Cards. And House of Cards and that show were also competing for Game of Thrones. And so this is ridiculous. And I'm a guy, I don't even own a TV. I don't have a TV in my house. But as soon as these guys from Netflix showed up, they gave me an idea, and I built a business around it. Because all of a sudden, everything snapped into place. It is not an original idea. It's been there all the time, staring at me and us. But for some reason, something clicked in my mind. I wanted to know why stories could do that to me. We all know that stories attract our attention, but I really wanted to figure out what is this thing where there's so many other rewarding things that merit my attention, but what I'm doing is I'm investing all my attention in something that doesn't give me any material return. So I set out to find out, what is this all about? I want to share with you a few of the things that I found and what I did with my sort of little discovery. First of all, stories are the password to someone's ongoing attention. And I find that interesting that this has been going on for a long time. It's been going on for more than we want to imagine, as long as our civilization exists. And for some reason, some people have understood this and others have entirely ignored it. And I just wanted to see what we could do with this. Well, the reason why stories command our attention is really simple, actually, because if you think only 100 years ago, most people did not know how to read and write. So stories were the only way for us to convey information. Now, today's stories are all about entertainment. They're for fun. But it used to be vital information. We used to depend on it. So the thing is, our brain has been trained that the moment it recognizes a story, it has been trained to instinctively start paying attention because our survival depended on it. Stories conveyed very important information, things that allowed us to survive. The thing is, with that brain of ours, there's a little bit of a problem because it's sort of like a very outdated hardware that's running on even more, a software that really needs an upgrade. The world has changed, but our brain really hasn't. We're still the same humans we were 50,000 years ago. Well, maybe there's a few nuances, but basically the operating system in our head is still the same. And I want to expand on this a little bit. Our brain is actually built for two things, really. First, to keep us safe. I mean, when you walked into this hotel or this room, the first thing your brain would have registered where the exits are and all these kind of things before you start focusing on other details. So I guess that's pretty obvious. But another thing that I discovered during my research is that the brain also serves another purpose. Principally, it's to save energy. I don't know if you knew this, but our brain is one of the organs that consumes most energy in our body. And right now, so if you need more energy, it consumes calories. The thing is, if you need more calories or more energy, you just go and grab some food. Today, that's pretty simple. You just walk out to the coffee table, you get a croissant, or you open your fridge and you get some food. But it wasn't like that before. 250,000 years ago until maybe, let's say, 700 years ago, when you were hungry, it meant you had to actually go and get food. You actually had to work the field or go and hunt something. So our brain was trained to save energy, not to consume too much calories, so we could last longer with the calories that we had in our body. So the thing about our brain is that it's actually not made to pay attention for a long time. And the reason why we want to resist this idea, but the thing is, this daydreaming thing is a defense mechanism. And that's what we are always up against. The great thing about stories is, stories organize that information so the brain doesn't have to. You see, storytelling has been perfected over a very long time because we had to make it efficient. Remember what it was for, right? It was to communicate vital information. Stories also provide clarity. And if there's any reason why I really believe that we want to read books, consume good stories, it's because it gives us that clarity. It gives us that moment of escape in a world that is increasingly confusing and distracting. Now, what happens in the absence of clarity? Well, the professor mistake. And we all make this mistake. I make this mistake. This professor mistake is actually, you'll find this in almost any industry. Let me talk about it. Well, first of all, our friend Einstein once nailed it when he said, well, if you can't explain it to a 7-year-old, it means that you basically don't really understand very well what it is that you want to explain, right? This is what we do when we actually get a chance to communicate with our clients. We get this opportunity, we go for it. We send them presentations with 50 pages. We send them, we basically inundate them with information. It's as if, going back to Netflix, they say, hey, we have this new show, it's great. It's called House of Cards. It's one big episode and it's 15 hours long. Would we actually want to consume something like that? No. The thing is, somehow in business, when we get that opportunity to communicate, we like to go all in with everything we've got. The question is, why do we want to complicate things? Well, first of all, it's the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is that when we forget all the effort and all the time it took us to go up our own learning curve, and we forget what it was like not to know what we know today. That's why often the best teachers are those people who are learning and passing on what they just learned to the students, not the big expert, because they really can't empathize with what a student is feeling. Little diagram. What does that mean for business? Well, you know, our clients are typically at understanding level 1 or 2. They sort of understand what we do. They sort of understand what our solution is all about. But the only reason why they would work with us is because they can't do it themselves. So they have a limited understanding. The thing is, they're probably, and especially in the family office space, in the wealth management space, these people, they make their money not exactly by investing most of the time. Most of the time there's something else. So their knowledge about our industry or whatever we know that they want from us is at a level of 1 or 2 on 10. And we're obviously the expert at level 10. But we're aware of this, right? We know we sort of have to make things a bit easier to understand. So what we do is we go down to level 5 or 6. We do an effort, and we think that's just fine. The problem is we're still talking over their heads because the people will resonate with the lower level. Now, this leads me to my other reason why we have so much difficulty simplifying things and why we have a tendency to complicate things. It has everything to do with our ego. Our ego, we worked hard to know what we know. And as experts, dumbing down our message feels extremely uncomfortable. It actually makes us feel stupid. It's extremely uncomfortable. Going to the next, and also, by the way, if we feel that we're impressing and we're really, if we feel smart, you know, the next question we have to ask is, how do our customers feel? How do our clients feel about that? Are we really resonating with them? The reason why we want to be so smart and why we want to be so awesome has a lot to do with the peer pressure we're under, right? So we focus so much on our competitors and industry standards, and everybody's doing this, and that's probably what's expected of us, and we should do the same thing. The thing is, to the clients, this is pretty much what an industry then looks like. You know, how do you differentiate? How do you make that choice? How do you make that selection? But you may ask, but what if my clients are also experts? What if I'm dealing with somebody who's quite knowledgeable about what I do? Granted that in this audience, we deal with people who are, you know, to a quite intermediate level of knowledge. But the thing about these experts is that even if your clients are experts, what is true that they also still have to explain, or I prefer to say, justify our products or ideas to others. Now, you may want to make this a bit simpler for them, right? So, because the thing is, people don't really buy the best product. What people buy is the product that they can understand the best. The easiest product to understand is what people buy. And in the absence of that kind of clarity, you know what happens, right? They just go to the brand names. You know, that's why BlackRock is like a vacuum cleaner absorbing all the retail money. Because they're one of those people. It's not that they're making more sense to people. The thing is that we are probably not resonating with them enough. Okay? Just an example. There's other mega firms like that absorbing capital like there's no tomorrow. But the thing is, our obsession should be with our messages, how can we make it really simple for that expert to then carry our message to that non-expert? How can we make that so intuitive that they don't really need to get comfortable and spend too much time with us in order to see if they can understand our message and trust us? Now, if this message is so easy to convey, you know, I guess our experts are going to be more willing to bring those ideas in front of their audiences, their clients. And, you know, remember the true purpose of stories, right? Stories are made to make information easier to share. That's the purpose of stories, and we should use that power. Who's seen this film, Inception? All right. So Inception is another one of those epiphany moments for me, because, and again, it wasn't really a new idea, but these are people who insert ideas into people's dreams, so those people believe that those ideas are their own. And that is sort of what stories do as well. Stories or novels don't give us the whole picture. What they do is they give us hints, and then we get into the plot. And when we get into the plot, we become part of that story. And that is also probably something that we could better explore in our industry, is to see how can we get people into the plot? How can we create inception with our audience? You see, the moment the audience asks, so what happens next, is also the moment that they adopt the story. That's the moment that you achieve a level of inception. So that's also a very big opportunity. Now, I've been talking about the benefits of story, and I've been explaining to you how we could put this to work. But how does storytelling exactly work for business? Where does it start? How do you do this? Well, first of all, I think many of us think that storytelling is actually an art. I'm sorry to tell you that storytelling is really a science. It's more than an art. It looks like an art, but after looking at this very closely, storytelling is a process. It's a formula. It's a template. Let's get into this. There are storytelling formats that have been around for a long time, and they have been perfected over thousands of years, right? In fact, only 7 stories have ever been told. Actually, it's 5, with one of them with 2 variations. And you should read this book if this theme is something that you're interested in. It's a fascinating book. It's a tough read because there's a lot of information in there, but if the reality is, if you try a format that is not within those templates, it probably won't work. It's a little bit like music. You know, when you go to this classical concert and the orchestra is warming up their instruments, it sounds like a cacophony. But those same people with those same instruments, seconds later, they snap into symphony. So this is what we do. Data is like that noise. But if we filter our data and our knowledge through those formats, it starts sounding like music. It's something that can appeal to people. Now, I just put 4, I could put almost any story up here on this slide. These are just 4 stories that I really like personally, so I thought I'd choose them. And they're from different times. And they have one thing in common. And in fact, most stories have this same thing in common. They'll have the hero's journey in common. The hero's journey is something that Joseph Campbell, he died in the mid-1980s. He's devoted his entire life into figuring out what makes myths and stories survive time. What makes them so contagious? And he found this structure. The hero's journey is essentially, you're going to find this in every single, almost in, let's say 80%, I'm sure that's correct, 80% of stories are going to follow this template. It's a template about a transformation. It's about good and evil. It's about discovery, and it's about redemption. You're going to find this in The Lord of the Rings. You're going to find it in Jaws. All these stories are going to have this in common. And the thing is, another thing that I found in storytelling is that when you think about telling a story, it's actually not your story that you should be telling, because all these great tales, they tell the story of a character that the audience can really relate to. That's why the underdogs are the heroes of the story. And that's why the shiny, powerful people are the villains. What side are we on when we're trying to become shiny, powerful, infallible? In the mind of our audience, who are we evoking? Interesting question, isn't it? So it starts with a character, and that character is typically our audience. And then there's no story without a conflict. The conflict is something that is a challenge to our audience. It goes on to us, our role in the stories that we should be telling is that we are the guide that helps this character through a transformation. That transformation leading into a journey. In our case, in the wealth management industry, is helping them figure out the right kind of portfolio for them, or helping them work themselves through figuring out an investment, and then eventually to the outcome. And so what I've done is I've taken this hero's journey and all those elements, and I've put them into a structure that we can use as a template for anything that we want to communicate about our business. We can design our website with it. We can put it in our brochures. It could become our elevator pitch. It could become our full story. I want to give you an overview of what that exactly looks like. You shape this in a structure. It's a formula. It's a format. And what this does is, it's a proven method that helps you clarify your message and earn the ongoing attention of your audience. All right? There's so much more. It's the tip of the iceberg, as a cliche. There's so much more we can say about this. If this is something that struck a chord with you, I have a free course online about this. Feel free to take it. It's there. That's the web address. It's a series of videos. After a while, I'm going to start sort of like getting on your case for you to buy my online course. But just enjoy the free part. That's there. If it gets too intense, you can always leave my list. But with that done, I want to thank you very much for your attention. I hope this made sense. Are we doing questions or not?
I have questions.
Are we very hungry? There's a question there.
Well, very interesting, and actually I comment to have your opinion about it. Is it really about storytelling, or is it about putting the client's interest and mindset at the center of what we all do, as opposed to being pressured by the peers, competition, and the noise in the industry?
Yes. So I think one of the most precious assets that we have is someone's ongoing attention in today's distracting world. And so the reason why I was so drawn to that epiphany that I had in the middle of those nights, binge watching those series, was this is probably a formula that helps us basically own that asset, which is someone's ongoing attention. And there's something about the sunken cost fallacy. When somebody's been spending a lot of time on something, they feel that they actually have to see it through. So that's really what we're after here. So it is about getting their attention the moment the audience recognizes the story, but also having a framework or a format or a formula that we can put to use so we can keep having their attention. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. That was quite interesting.
Thank you very much.
I believe in what you said, because most of the time I have thought. But in the past 10 years, the attention span has shrunk. So how do you make up for that? How do you treat it? How do you try to keep that attention or stretch that attention?
I'm glad you asked this question, because you're so right. So it's about that brain trigger. It's about what our brain is tuned into. So as soon as it recognizes the story format, it goes into a mode that it has to pay attention. So the fact is, the example that I started with is even though I'm falling asleep, I just need to keep watching. I just couldn't help myself. It's just a random example. But the thing is, there's a lot of debate about, oh, your video should be 1 minute. No, it should be 30 seconds. Well, your article should be 500 words. But some people still sell books of, 50,000 words. And some people still sit and watch a whole movie of 2 hours. So it's all about if you execute the format right, if you know what the story format is, and you know how to execute on it, you can keep people's attention. Because it's like a hack to someone's attention, essentially.
But human nature now is changing,
Mm.
and their attention span is getting less and less. And this is a big challenge.
But the other thing is, so 10 years ago, it's not going to be the same as something today.
Unless it's a great story and people will, and then you have the events. I'm not entirely convinced that human nature has changed. I really believe we're still the same. I think what we have is, we have a lot more distraction going on. But the reason why we cling to stories is because those are, if we are confronted with a nice story, it gives us peace. It gives us an escape. And that's why we hold on to it once we find it. And that's why, for example, you wouldn't mind not checking your phone when you're watching a great movie. That's one of the only moments that you really want to be focused on that movie. So. Please.
Since we are in a world that from a business perspective is global thing, in which way your formula in storytelling adapt and is fine when we work with so different cultures?
Okay, good question. I think it's still all about the story format. What it does is, and one of the things that I should mention also in my answer is that the kind of people that I work with typically have long sales cycles. So where it takes you several months, or maybe even in some cases years, to win someone's trust and get their business. The challenge in that is to keep the attention of those people and stay top of mind over long periods of time without really dropping the ball, right? And so, personally, I actually believe that transcends cultures because it gives you time to sync your culture with the other one. Now, obviously, the content of your story is culture sensitive, obviously, right? But as long as you can be sensitive to if you apply the format right and you do understand that the story that you create is not about you, but about your audience, something that they can resonate with, then you need a little bit of a sensibility towards culture. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
One more, and then I think we're going to have some lunch, right?
We're seeing some of the firms that we partner with actually have a very senior position, just they're replacing their chief marketing officer with chief storytelling officer. Do you feel that in some way this is somehow linked to what is happening on the political scene in terms of the technology enabling, with filter bubbles and alternative facts and being able to, or the need to deliver your messages to a lot more of a targeted, several targeted niche segments of your audience? Or do you feel that this is not related in any way and there should be some aspects of your message which are just a captivating story that speaks to all?
Yeah, so good question, because in 20 minutes you really can't get into depth about it. You sort of have to select what you're going to talk about. I had to select that, but the whole process, when you look at the process I showed you earlier, it starts with getting a very clear understanding on who your audience is, so your client. So even movie studios do this, and they figure out well, we're going to make a children's movie, are we going to make a terror movie, are we going to make an action movie? They think about the audience. Netflix was built on specifically targeting certain niches, consumer niches. We have to do the same thing. So if you want to make a story that resonates with our target client, we better understand what that resonance is all about with the target client. So yes, it's totally tailor-made to who your ideal client is, and the story should resonate with those people. That's the only way you can get their attention, by the way. If they can recognize themselves in your story, and therefore say, we belong to the same tribe as this story. Let's have some lunch. Thanks again.